What up, guys? I am Joe Bennett, or as you may know me, the Hypertrophy Coach. I'm here doing a Q&A with my man Nick to answer the first question y'all are going to have. Yes, this is Nick's girlfriend's shirt. She let me borrow it, so thank you very much for letting me borrow the shirt. And I'm going to say, too, we're going to attempt to keep these answers short. If you're not familiar with any of our style of answering, we don't have long answers, I don't think, because we like to listen to ourselves talk, because I hate hearing myself talk, but hopefully because we're trying to create a complete answer. And once you've trained a lot of people, you know, there's a ton of context, a ton of individual situations which can lead to long answers. All that being said, we're going to try really, really hard to keep it short. And so if you have more questions or you feel like we left some stuff out on any of these, hit us in the comment section and then we'll just write some books down in there. And now for my man, Nick.
Yep, so I am Nick Gloff here with Raw Nutrition and representing Team Gloff. So I'm just here doing my thing, doing the questions with Joe, and that's a terrible introduction to give.
But we don't do retakes, so we're going to keep it.
Yeah.
First question, which I thought was good, which is why I'm answering it. Someone asked for what are some principles or mental cues to take a set to failure, baseline fundamentals to stay in the set. So there's a whole lot of things I could answer on this one. But I think one of the first things, there's two big things. As an umbrella principle, you know, I would say before you go into a set and once you're done with the set to evaluate, because this can mean a lot of different things for a lot of people, I would say, did you make that as hard as possible on yourself? Because ultimately that's the goal, and that can translate to actual difference with mechanics, difference with how the last rep looked. It kind of ties all that form and all that challenging stuff together. So that's one for you, because you can take that and do what's going to work best with you and your body. And just ask yourself that. Just try and be honest. Did you make that as hard as possible on yourself? And the second thing that I would look at is, if you look at a set, whether you've got somebody looking at it, you can see yourself in the mirror, you film it afterwards, I would try and identify one specific thing that you mess up. And if you mess up one specific thing, then just have one thing that you know to think about coming into set. So if it's you're in a squat and you bounce out of the bottom, as I'm in that last set, that's maybe the one conscious thought I would have, you know, because once you actually get into working sets, you can't have 10 conscious thoughts. I would just literally say whatever words, like I'll think about if someone's messing up the bottom, I'll say own the bottom. Even the time to use pauses, like I'm not big on tempo or timing stuff or whatever necessarily for everybody, but if it really is like I'm just going to pause here for a second or 2 seconds, whatever it is, give yourself one thought before you go in, instead of going into a set with 30 different thoughts, in which case once all the pain comes in and, you know, everything starts to hurt and you get flush and you feel like you're going to pass out and your body's burning, then you got 30 thoughts floating around there at the same time and nothing good comes out of it. So I think those two things would be a decent place to start to get more out of your top sets or your failure sets.
I think probably something that goes way under noticed is your mental state when you're actually going into the session before you walk into the gym is a lot of the problem. I can use a little bit of a client example or things that I see in people, is that if you have the mentality that you want to go into sessions and you want to crush it, you have a big expectation for a big set, or you're changing your training style maybe, or you're getting more intense into the training you're already doing, and you're trying to nail down how do I get the most out of this set, you might be walking into the gym already anxious about what's about to happen because of the demands you're about to put yourself in. You're not really visualizing the success of having gone there most of the time. It's more about the anxiety of, can I do this? Can I take it there? Do I know how to get there? Hence the reason why the question is being asked, and this individual that's asking may even be in the position where they're doing this, where they're coming into the gym and they're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can take that hack set all the way to get that extra 2 reps, or get it all the way to where I can't move anymore, or am I gonna do this without a technical failure? Like it's negative thought patterns that are going into the approach of what you're doing for your training at that point a lot of the time, which isn't helpful. And so the biggest thing that I would say is already just looking at your training as the thing that you're trying to go enjoy doing, not like you're putting the shield on your back and getting your, you know, your holster and going to war. You're not doing that. You're going to the gym. So go to the gym, the thing that you enjoy doing, that you want to do either for the moment, just to enjoy the training itself, or for a further on goal, and look at it that way, rather than trying to like hype yourself up into this and create big expectation for yourself. And then aside from that, when you're framing it in a more positive way and going into it as an opportunity to try and see what you can do, seeing it as an opportunity to hone the skill of what you're doing, like Joe said, you want to look at it as how many opportunities do I have to make this better? approach that in the initial approach from you walked into the door, you're in session, you're getting prepared for the big set that you've been worried about and thinking about. Now you go through your warm-ups, you go through the pre-session prep with that in mind. You start targeting the things that you know are technical issues for you. You know if your breathing isn't quite perfect. You spend extra time with your warm-up sets before you put your working weights on, working on your breathing. If you know that you have a problem with getting into depth, you work on any prep movements you had to do. You get a little bit more intense with the tempo control and the pausing in length and ranges. Work your way into them in the bottom of it. Feel out all these things that you know are present technical issues or mental issues that you're having with them so that you can address them in a time before it matters. Once you're in the set, like Joe said, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do there. You can only entertain 1, 2, 3 thoughts, maybe. 1, 2, 3 cues, maybe. And that's on the really top end. And if you get past that, you're just having all the thoughts circling in your head constantly, and you can't really attend to any one of them and be accurate with your movement because you're not present in the moment where it's happening.
That was a big thing too that I agree with 100%. It's just the positive visualization coming in, looking back on past experiences, hopefully, because that's half of it. Like I don't personally don't think about a whole lot coming into top sets anymore, because once you've done them, and like I know at some point in time, especially if you look at your hardest, if I've never quit on a top set, if I'm going to stay in minus something actually getting legitimately injured, then you just look back on that, you know that this time is not going to be any different. So that's a big thing too, is as opposed to focusing on the negative stuff, it's like, you know, once you've stuck in enough sets, enough time, and taken some stuff really far, it's like who's going to bail on a set of chest after you've, you know, done some horrible stuff on legs, that kind of stuff. So positive visualization, I think, is huge as well too. Thoughts? This question is just thoughts on mind-muscle connection. You know, I think this is a good one to bring up and just kind of give a little bit of nuance around, because I think back in the day, and I talked about when I started, it was my first education was Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. You know, it's something Arnold wrote about a lot. And I honestly liked to think about how he talked about thinking about muscle and kind of having this internal thought process, whatever. So the short answer, there is some merit there for sure. I don't care what anybody says. It's not just, we're not pieces of metal, you know, just connecting with joints and just moving stuff around like machinery. Everything we're looking at is an internal process, which again is all brain controlled. So to say that some sort of internal cue that creates some sort of positive outcome for somebody isn't beneficial is ridiculous. I think the mind-muscle connection can be a good thing. Where people take it too far is they will do something ridiculous, right? We do have, I think, good guardrails for our training, you know, through what people have produced results with, from what science and evidence says, where if somebody was trying to tell me they had a great mind-muscle connection for their biceps doing a power snatch, I'd be like, man, you've got something going on out there, right? Like this doesn't fit within any guide rails of what I would do to train my biceps. So yes, I think there's some guide rails that we have there for form matters, mechanics matters, you know, having a good start point for how you do exercising matters, and trying to stay within those guide rails is very important. So you don't want to go too far with the mind-muscle connection thing. And then but there are some people who have gone the other extreme where it's basically like, oh, if you're in a good position and you just have good form, that's all that matters. Mind-muscle connection is a waste of time. And I can't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. One, because it takes the individual out. Again, for someone or for a coach to tell someone that's not important to an individual, you're just imposing your will on them and not listening to the individual differences that help people. So I think a good just general rule of thumb is you should, especially if you're brand new, you should start within the guide rails of focus mainly on put yourself in good positions to start. And then as you put yourself in good positions, that mind-muscle connection, that internal focus is a good thing. And then I always just talk briefly about muscle sensation as well too, where there's always just a difference in different muscle lengths. And that again is kind of a nervous system to muscle thing, where again, if you do a leg extension, most people say, oh, I feel leg extensions. I got this hard, crampy, contraction-y thingy. Whereas you say, oh, well, how do you feel squats? If I'm in the bottom of a squat, like I don't have that same sensation. So it also isn't important to not look for a specific sensation. It's not supposed to feel the same everywhere. And sensation, a specific sensation, does not necessarily correlate with what's going to be best for results. So a lot of people will unfortunately spend time, it's like, I'm just going to do all leg extensions because I have a better mind-muscle connection. They like that sensation better. And they'll neglect things like squats because they don't feel it as much. So again, it's one of those things, like a lot of things, I'm not a big fan of people that go all one way or the other. Some people say, all that matters is mind-muscle connection. No, use the guardrails of what we know with form, execution, mechanics, on a lot of kind of stuff. But at the other end of that, I honestly think training is still an art form. I mean, at the end of the day, people don't want to talk about that a lot. I mean, I kind of fell in love with the art form. And so there's a balance of all that stuff there as well, too. So
I would say about 80% of the way there on executing on anything is going to be what is visible from the outside in. And so that is where like the dichotomy that we have between what he's laid out with mind-muscle connection people that are all the way on the other side of the pendulum. And then on the other side is just get into the proper position and you're good. Like there's merit to both of them. We don't need to be on one side or the other because really they're trying to point at the same thing. The person that says that position is the only thing that matters is, okay, well, can you see that everything is aligned properly? The angles are proper. You within the motion that you're doing, your joints, muscles, fiber angles, the implement you're using, everything lines up so that mechanically, if you're looking at it and try to model it from like a paper and pen standpoint, if you really wanted to take it so far, it'd be like, okay, well, by necessity, force is getting placed through those muscle tissues we're trying to train because we've taken all of those major constraints out of the way. We know that we have boxed everything in to the degree from things that we can visually represent and see outside of ourselves. Everything's aligned. It's going to work. You're going to use X muscle group to do X job because that's what its job is to do. And we have constrained all of the other things that could make it do anything else or have another major contributor do the work you're trying to get to have happen from the one muscle group you're targeting. Okay? So there's the merit there. But then what gets missing in the subcontext of what's going on with the mind-muscle connection people is where that 80% is coming from things that you can visually see very easily because they're larger, gross modeling things. Like he said with the leg extension, like you can look at this very easily. If I was sitting into a leg extension right now and doing one, it's like, okay, well, this is the direction that the force is going to be placed upon me. This is exactly the direction my upper leg is oriented. Rotation is neutral here. So I'm moving exactly the same way that the force is pressed upon me. There you go. What muscle does that job? To take this bone and move it from here to here. It's your quad. Okay? Those are things that we can see from the outside to say, all right, well, if we model this, there's nothing that is going to do the job but this. Correct. But can you do that better? Because there are fine, more minute details that can and will contribute to the overall quality of the stimulus if they're controlled for that you cannot as easily see when looking at the overall picture from the outside. Yes. And that's what the mind-muscle connection thing is. It's really going fine-tooth comb and pointed into mind-muscle connection is almost like a representation of can you control everything perfectly and properly through timing so that the actual tension that is placed on the tissue throughout the entirety of the movement you're doing is something that you can get a sensation on that target muscle with, because you're not moving it so fast or under a lack of control that you're utilizing other muscle groups at certain points or only using some of what you can in some parts of the range of motion to lift and accelerate a load through space enough that it'll move, you travel behind it, but you don't actually get all of the force necessary to move the true load of it because that force is already accelerating through space. You have positions laid down, aligned, braced, and working properly to have the singular action we're trying to focus on be the major one that is getting that muscle to do the job. And that last little bit is the mind-muscle connection that ensures that the finer details that you may not necessarily be able to see just clearly and plainly at that one joint are being done to ensure that this works to the best degree possible. Yeah.
now we do a cool sign off. Bye. See you later. Come back soon.